is Daniel. He lives in Babylon, but he didn't always live there. He was born in Jerusalem, in a royal or noble family. Life was good. He had the best of everything. But then one day, King Nebuchadnezzar and his army came and destroyed it all, taking with them not only some of the vessels of the house of God, but also
youths without blemish, of good appearance, and skillful in all wisdom, endowed with knowledge, understanding, learning, and competent to stand in the king's palace. Daniel 1:4 ESV.
That was Daniel.
After he was captured, Daniel, whose name means God is my judge, had his name changed by King Nebuchadnezzar to Belshazzar, which means, may Bel, who was a false god, protect his life. He and his 3 friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, were to be schooled in the language and culture for 3 years. Early on, however, the king wanted those he had taken to eat the same food and wine that he had at every meal. Daniel resisted, which is something that could have got him in trouble, but for the fact that, as it says in verse 1:9,
and God gave Daniel favor and compassion in the sight of the chief of the eunuchs.
So Daniel and his friends were allowed by the eunuch to have only vegetables and water for 10 days, and then were compared with the others. At the end of the 10 days, it was clear that Daniel and his friends looked much healthier than the others. And so from then on, everyone was given water and vegetables. Fast forward about 70 years, Daniel was now an old man, but he still was in great shape from eating all those vegetables. Forget Mike. If you can, be like Dan. Not only was he in great shape, but he was also one of the top 3 officials of all of Babylon. Pretty good for a kid taken as a prisoner of war. When Daniel was 80 years old, the age when most people were done with all their adventures, Daniel was about to have the greatest one of all. Because, as you remember, Daniel was one of the top 3 officials. And the Bible says that the king had planned to put Daniel over the whole kingdom. This made the other officials not too happy, and they decided they were going to get rid of Daniel. But Daniel was a righteous and faithful man. There was nothing he had done that they could use against him. So they decided to use his faith against him. They went to King Darius, Nebuchadnezzar was long gone by then, and got him to sign a document that says, whoever prays to anyone other than King Darius for the next 30 days will be cast into a den of lions. They know that Daniel prayed every day, so it was an easy way to get rid of him. That would not stop Daniel. Verse 6:10 says,
when Daniel knew that the document had been signed, he went to his house where he had windows in his upper chamber, open toward Jerusalem. He got down on his knees 3 times a day, and prayed and gave thanks before his God as he had done previously.
Those who were against him immediately found out what was going on, and went back to King Darius and reminded the king not only of the law he had made, but the punishment of those who broke it. And the king said, yes, I know. And they said, well, Daniel's broken it.
Then the king, when he heard these words, was much distressed, and set his mind to deliver Daniel, and he labored till the sun went down to rescue him.
So Daniel was brought and cast into the den of lions. And the king said to Daniel,
may the God whom you serve continually deliver you.
God was Daniel's only hope, and the king knew it. And not only did they throw him into the lion den, they put a stone across the opening and sealed it with the king's ring, so he couldn't get out even if he tried. The king was so saddened by the whole thing. It says that he stayed up all night fasting, allowing nothing to divert his attention. Then, early in the morning, he got up and ran over to the den of lions, and right before he got there, cried out and asked Daniel if he was okay. He couldn't believe it. His dreams had come true.
Then Daniel said to the king, O king, live forever. My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths, and they have not harmed me, because I was found blameless before him, and also before you, O king. I have done no harm.
The king was absolutely thrilled. He not only got Daniel out of the den, but he threw the men who accused Daniel into the den with the lions. And let me just say, it didn't end well for them. Afterwards, the king wrote to all the people, nations, and languages that dwelt in all the earth, and said, Peace be multiplied to you. I make a decree in all my royal dominion. People are to tremble and fear before the God of Daniel. For he is the living God, enduring forever. His kingdom shall never be destroyed, and his dominion shall be to the end. He delivers and he rescues. He works signs and wonders in heaven and on earth.
He has rescued Daniel from the power of the lion.
I mean, how cool is that? Everything ended well for Daniel. He not only got to live, but it says that towards the end of his life, that wasn't the end of his adventures, because as the last verse in chapter 6 says, after all of this happened, Daniel prospered. Things to think about. Think number 1. If you remember back in the beginning, Daniel came from either a noble family or a royal family. So up until the time that King Nebuchadnezzar took him, he was living a pretty pampered life. I'm sure being captured and forced to live in another country where you're being told what to do 24 hours a day was not an easy thing for Daniel to deal with. Like Daniel, sometimes difficult things can happen to us. But think about it. Daniel was able to keep going because he knew that God was with him every step of the way, just as he is with us. Think number 2. What happened to Daniel was not the result of something that he had done wrong. In fact, as you remember, it said he was a righteous man. But even though he did everything right, people still plotted against him. We don't know whether it was because they were jealous of the promotion the king was about to give him, or because they didn't want a foreigner to be in the number 1 position. But what we do know is that their schemes against him were no fault of his own. But think about it, even though he was blameless, Daniel didn't waste his time complaining or trying to plead his case. He just kept doing what he knew he should do. May we all have his determination. Think number 3. One interesting transformation in the story is King Darius. He went from wanting people to worship him to wanting the people to worship only the true God. This is because he saw the example Daniel set before him and could not deny the truth. Think about it. Not only was the king changed through Daniel's example, but by the king's example, how many others were changed as well. We may never know the lasting effects of all the lives that are changed because we choose to live for God. If you've enjoyed this video, please make sure that you like and subscribe and leave a comment below about what Bible character you'd like to hear about next. Your interaction goes a long way in encouraging more of this art form.